here we are.
There you go. That's how it works. How
Magic.
are you, man?
I'm great. Yourself?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Really appreciate your being number 2 in my Minnesotan Viking hat trick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. Love it.
So explain that to me. If I talk to you, invariably and inevitably, we're going to talk about Rick Fay and Eric Paulson.
Without a doubt.
If I talk, when I spoke to Eric 2 days ago, you and Rick come up. When I talk to Rick on Monday, you and Eric will come up. So explain that to me. What is it's a beautiful relationship. Explain that magic to me.
Well, initially I started with Rick in his garage, and there was like 8 people. And eventually we moved into the first Minnesota Collie group, Minnesota Jean Fan Collie group. And it was above a Swati Thai restaurant. And it was the awesome place to train.
Yep.
Brick walls, wooden floor.
I remember.
Just, you know, beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a funny story because Rick and I would train every single day. And all of a sudden, you know, we'd always do rounds and we'd spar before class. And all of a sudden, knock on the door kind of happens, and we open it up, and it's Eric. And I remembered him because we used to compete against each other in gymnastics in high school.
Yes.
Right? So I kind of go, hey, all right, okay, yeah, you. We're going to be done sparring a little bit. And I shut the door on Eric. And then basically Rick and I commenced on our sparring, and then when we were done, we let people in.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, back then Eric had the long hair. He was going in for the model look, you know.
Right.
And he, you know, so Eric, you know, martial artist through and through. But man, it was so funny because, you know, Rick has just a unique, dry sense of humor, funny. Eric,
same thing.
of course,
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, it was easy. Bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
So it's all Minnesota, right? Minnesota and bouncing off, and he became a thing. And then he went out to California, and then that's when the Eric Paulson that we know exploded into who he is right now.
Well, so a bunch of things there, because I met Rick in California in July of 1983.
Yep.
And I remember being so impressed with him. This is when I was still living in Barbados, and I was like, okay, if I could only be as good as this guy, right, I'll be happy. So now, where were you in July of 1983? Had you already started training?
I was wrestling, doing martial arts, and literally I met this guy named Steve K. And Steve K was one of Rick's students in the garage, and we worked with each other. And one day I'm looking over at him, and I see him doing Sinawali with 2 knives. And I said, hey, that's Kali. And he goes, Collie? And I go, yeah, whatever. Because all I was reading the books, right?
Yeah.
And then I pestered him for, I don't know, like a month every single day. Where do you do that? When can I do it with you? How can I get there? And he would just kind of blow me off, blow me. And finally he said, okay, come with me on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
And that was, I think that was right. Basically, probably when Rick got right back from the camp out in Irvine. Was that the Irvine camp?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was right at the beginning of August of 1983.
Okay. So yeah, that's when he got back. Now, isn't that interesting that now you spend a fair amount of your time in Orange County, California, don't you?
Yes, I do.
With Eric, right? As a matter of fact, I think that there's got to be at least 5 of you. There's you and 4 clones. Because you always seem to be in California. You're always doing instructor development conferences for the World Thai Boxing Association, right? You're somewhere in the world doing your own seminars. You're at your school teaching, and then you got 2 kids and a wife to take care of. So there's got to be, you know, a multiplicity effect there. How do you handle all of that?
Well, the big thing is I really am diligent with how I plan my days and how I plan my weeks and how I plan my months. So I really organize my time, and I have a real steady block scheduling. So I know exactly where I teach, when I teach, up on the walls, where I'm going to be, how I'm going to be. And beautiful thing is I have such a great group of guys at my school that, like, I was just in Vietnam for 2.5 weeks and everything runs, no problem. It just keeps going. And they've been with me since I opened. All right. And I have about 30 instructors. So in all the various different classes. Yeah. And so I'm perfect, living the dream, because I can be there, teach, and then have the opportunity to go out and work with, obviously at the camps. I'll do that, and then I'll have a seminar, or there'll be a fight somewhere, or I'm also doing high performance coaching training, and those are usually 4 or 3 days, or I do some speaker training, or I'm trying to just get outside the martial arts box a little bit, and be a white belt somewhere. And it's been a blast, because it's really enabled me to even become more productive, more organized with my time, and be able to address more people than I ever would have before. So I wish I could clone myself. That'd be super awesome.
So that team, that magic team that you talked about, that's Nat and Andy. That's who it started with, right?
Yes.
Okay. So see, because I mean, and I as fantastic and fascinating and inspiring as is your story about defeating cancer, I think just as fascinating is the story of what those two did while you were out of commission to keep the academy running. So what did you do anything specific to cultivate them, or they just happen to be two angels?
Well, I think a big part of it is their character is so strong. But we trained day in, and Andy started first right when I opened up my school in 1992. So he was there. He was training the whole time. Nat came a little bit later, but Nat was training at the Minnesota Collie Group with Rick, and he wanted to pursue more of the fight game, Thai boxing. And we were competing in Thai boxing. We were competing and really engaging in that element of the martial arts. So not only were we doing the other stuff, but we really were focused on also training in Thailand and fighting and trying to get as much experience as we could there. And so he wanted to do that. So he came over, and he just came right into the team, and it was just a natural fit because he's such a hard working guy, and just the grind was there. And we basically built this bond through training and just pushing ourselves to our limits. And so when I got sick, they just filled in the gap. I mean, they did what they had to do. And my wife was kind of like organizing stuff and said, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And they just fell into the role. And what's really, in the long run, I'm really a person who tries to look for the positive in everything. And in the end, they became so good at running the school. When I came back, I didn't have to do it anymore. I could just teach.
Right.
And so Andy really runs the back end of things. He does all the web stuff. He does all the money stuff. He does everything. And Nat does basically everything on the floor, making sure people are there to test. He signs people up. He upgrades people. So I am probably, I would consider one of the most blessed guys in the world, because very few times do you have guys that will be willing to stay and just endure that and keep pushing and then keep with you, and so I really try to do everything I can to make it worth it for him as well.
So in not a weird way, actually, but if somebody said to you, well, what was the reason for your, contracting cancer? It's almost like it was so everybody, you benefited from it, and then a whole ton of people around you benefited from your being sick.
Oh yeah. And it's more than that. It changed how I thought about things fundamentally, because prior to my cancer, as an All-American gymnast, I wrestled for University of Minnesota. I things were very easy for me. I could watch things and pick them up. And I love to just push and grind. And, so those years of developing and really pushing with Rick and training and then developing all the fight skills and going on and competing and just push, built a huge foundation. But at the same time, I wasn't anywhere near as empathetic as I needed to be as an instructor, because I'd look at people sometimes and be like, how can they not do this? This is like the easiest thing in the world. Well, yeah, because as a lifelong athlete.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Yeah.
Cancer comes around, gives me a jab cross, right kick in the nuts, and puts me down. I come back. I have to relearn how to walk. I got to relearn how to do all the martial arts. My left foot doesn't have like sensory nerves, and it doesn't have the motion that it used to have. It's like the lower body's athleticism was like ripped away. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, like I say, I became the guy I used to make fun of. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am.
Right.
And that changed my entire outlook on teaching people. I became far more empathetic. Our school now, I mean, we're looking for people to have absolutely zero skill, zero. They've never done anything, because who really needs the martial arts? The athletic, talented, tough guy? No. A person who has no confidence, who is really just, they're so in a shell that they can't break out. They're scared. Those are the people who need it. And back before my cancer, I overlooked a lot of those people because I wanted the more athletic, competitive, fighter, more selfish, more or less.
Yeah. So Nelson's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that's not a real thing, right? That's just that's Rick's nickname for it.
Yes, I tried to get it. I said, hey, Lou Gehrig's got a disease. Why can't I have mine? I was the first guy to survive it.
Right.
I tried to vie for it, but they already had a name. It was called neural lymphomatosis. But I was the first survivor to date that they know of.
Yeah. So the neural lymphomatosis came after the non-Hodgkin's.
Yeah. So what I had initially was, so I had initially was stage 4 liver cancer. Yeah. Which had a very low survival rate at that point as well, because I had a 21 centimeter by 11 centimeter tumor on one lobe and a 7 centimeter tumor on another lobe. I had stuff on my spleen, and I had involvement on my kidneys. And so they were like, and I remember V asked, well, what can I do as a wife? And they said, get your affairs in order. Wow. And so she kind of put together this little photo album of all my competitions and all my training. She brought in videos, and she said, listen, this is who you're dealing with. You're not dealing with some guy who's not gonna fight. He's gonna fight, and he'll die fighting. All right. So, and that was my whole thing. It's like, well, I might have cancer, but cancer's not gonna have me.
There you go. Yeah. How long have you and V been together? Since you were how old?
Well, here's kind of a unique story, and it's because we get along so well right now, but we got divorced. But this is a while back. This is probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So we went through all this battle, all this fight. We have our kids, and who knows, man? It was, I look at it, it's never one way ever. Yeah. Maybe I fundamentally kind of changed some things. I don't know what was going on, but we ended up getting a divorce, but we're still very close. I went to Vietnam with her for 2 weeks with the kids, but we got married in 1996. Okay. And so then, and then 98, we had Nina, my daughter, and then 2000, Gunner. And then 2002, at the beginning, or at the end of 2002, or Memorial Day of 2002, that's when I was diagnosed. And then the battle was on. There you go. I tell you this is probably one of the reasons why we're still really good friends, because regardless of what happened, I look at it like if it wasn't for her, I would not be here right now anyways. Right. Yeah. So, we just said, we're going to be there for our kids. We're going to continue on, it's the way it is, so we're still very amicable. We still see each other a lot. And I just look at it I don't have that vendetta mentality. It's like, geez, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about the bond that was created. So the bond between you and Rick was also created through training, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because so these are my earliest, my greatest and my fondest memories of you and Rick. So you tell me if I got it right. Mid-Michigan, Dan Timlin's Mid-Michigan Academy, 1987. At the end of the day, outside your tent, you and Rick, before dinner, have to do your rounds on the pads.
Yeah, that's how we were. That's how we were. We did rounds all the time, and our philosophy was we can do 5 rounds always.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yes.
And so that was such a staple. We had this thing that we used to call the Big Five. And the Big Five was Sinawali, and we just went through that. Then we'd go right to double stick sombrata, single stick sombrata, right side, left side. And then right from that, we'd go to Huba Chisao, knife sparring, knife pads, and focus mitts. And that was the Big Five. And that was, we figured, what are the things that we can get the most bang for the buck if we have a limited amount of time? So it's Sinawali, sombrata, knife sparring, Huba Chisao, and tie pads.
What role, if any, does the Big Five play today for you?
Oh, for me, I consider it, I mean, just the fact that you're getting so many different attributes that are so vast that they, you know, regardless of how you think they fit into anything, they fit into everything.
Right.
You know, and that's what people don't understand. It gets so specific. Well, I'm only going to be doing this because I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, what about those times where you have to, maybe you can't move a certain way, you're injured somewhere, you pulled a muscle, or you're just, you know, not feeling so good. You have these other training methods that you could use that don't require contact and smashing yourself and getting killed and beating your body up, that will just take your attributes to another level. I tell people that sombrata probably did more for me being able to parry punches than anything, because your checking hand is constantly searching. And so when I'm sparring, they're like, gosh, your hand is everywhere. And I go, yeah, because I wanted to not get hit in the head with a stick.
Yeah. You know, I heard you say once, I think it was when you were training Brock Lesnar for his fight against Mark Hunt, and it was something about, I heard you talk about blocking punches with the elbow. And as soon as you said that, I go, well, that's what Vunak talked about in the you know, in the destructions and what have you. And I thought to myself, not necessarily that you took it from Kali, but it just happens to be there.
Yeah. And that's where all that previous training comes in, because you have so much more to dig into.
Yes.
And somebody who's just, you know, kind of staying within the main frame of martial arts. You look at some of the greatest fighters out there. Look at Anderson Silva. Who is he training with? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all, even George St. Pierre, he's doing all these different types of training. He's constantly trying to, he's a martial artist. They're martial artists. And these are some of the best fighters ever. And they love the martial arts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you know, now they get their, you know, Anderson's definitely, he's done fighting, but he's still training all the time because he's a martial artist. And that's what I think made him so good, because he was able to look at other things and say, man, I can get just one thing out of that. That's going to change how I fight. And being open and creative is huge.
That sounds like, I think Sifu Dan tells a story about watching a demonstration or something with Cedro Bruce. And then at the end, Cedro Bruce said, did you see that one thing that the guy did, you know, that was whatever. Anyhow, to get back to you and Rick, Michigan again, 1988, but now it's the start of the day before we start training. You and Rick are under a tree doing, from what I remember, it looked like entering to trap into grappling.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a funny story because I came into the fold with Rick almost as I was coming, well, the summer between high school and college, and I was going to be wrestling right away in the fall. So I was just training martial arts with Rick in the garage, and then I'd go to wrestling practice. We'd train in the afternoon, and then I'd go to wrestling practice, and then I'd run down to the collie group at night.
Yeah.
And for classes. And so I was constantly training, and while I was wrestling, I tried to bring wrestling into it. And then I took a time where I said, okay, I'm only when I'm wrestling, I'm going to wrestle, but now I'm just going to focus purely on Muay Thai, purely on collie, purely on Jeet Kune, because I've been wrestling for so long that I want to focus. And then eventually we then said, okay, now let's bring it back into the fold.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, you know, Sifu Larry Hartzell, and that opened up a whole new element to trapping to grappling, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't just like trapping to a double leg takedown. It was like trapping and then getting in and being able to really use the trapping in a functional way, and then standing lock flows, which then ended up on the ground for ground lock flows, which is really a precursor to submission grappling.
Yes.
And so that, I think having that ability to have those lock flows and kind of having that mentality to go from one lock to the next lock to the next lock to the next lock to the next lock, and then combining it with kicking to punching to trapping to grappling was so huge, because now when I'm on the ground, this is where you can pull off trapping. The guy can't go anywhere. You're on top, he can't run. So you're hammer fisting them, and their hand comes up, you can pull it away and hammer and then pin, and I work a lot of that with the guys.
So, okay, so when you hear people say, oh, trapping doesn't work.
Well, it's context, right?
Right.
Put them on the ground where they can't run, and all they can do is do this. What is this? Reference points all over the place.
I didn't get a chance to ask Eric this, so I'll ask you. The lock flow stuff in shoot wrestling, do you know if that came about because of Kali, or did it always exist?
Well, what I understand is this: the first time in 1990, I think it was, I was out there and I met Sensei Yuri, but at this point, and Hiro, but at this point nobody knew he knew Shudo, because he wanted to learn Jeet Kune,
right,
and Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah. So
he was out there, and we were all out to eat, and Guro Dan says, well, this is Yuri, he's from Japan, you know, he's coming here to learn Jeet Kune Do and Jeet Kune martial arts and Kali. And I'm like, oh, cool, that's awesome. And then the next thing I went out there, and there's Shudo, right? Yeah. And apparently Guro Dan says, well, then one day Yuri goes, Guru, I have something you might be interested in. And it was shoot wrestling, right? And he's like, why didn't you tell me this? And he goes, I thought you already knew all of this stuff. And he goes, man, this is great. So I think, you know, the lock flows are part of the deal.
Yeah.
From Shudo.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, you know, there was influence because he was such a Jeet Kune fanatic and a Kali fanatic. And he is like a machine. I mean, you've seen him.
Yeah.
You know, and he'd get on the dummy or doing trapping. It's like boom, 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 boom. Everything's so pure and so exact in his movements.
Amazing. Amazing.
Unbelievable fighter.
Hey, listen, back in your youth and gymnastics, were you compared more to Kurt Thomas or Bart Connor?
Well, you know, I was a high bar, parallel bar guy.
Okay.
And so, you know, Kurt Thomas was doing pommel horse and the flares and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was more of a, you know, the Bart on the bars. And I loved high bar and I loved parallel bars. And then it basically went high bar, parallel bars, floor, vault, and it was a tie for last for pommel horse and rings. You know? And which is weird because the rings are very similar to high bar, but I think when I was in 8th grade, I wiped out and fell right on my head. So after that, I'm like, I don't like these things too much. But I have to do it because I'm an all-arounder. Yeah. And then maybe my body type wasn't made as well for the pommel horse. And the pommel horse is very difficult because that's the only piece of equipment that you have to bear your weight the entire time. You're always on your hands and wrists, and you got to make your body go over, and you're constantly holding yourself up. Whereas high bar, it's you're spinning around. Parallel bars, there's a few things that obviously you have to do some strength things, but you're doing a lot of momentum and a lot of movement. Rings obviously save the strength moves. You're doing a lot of flow and a lot of flying around. And then vault, it was running and flying and hitting that horse, and then the floor, it's all movement based.
Did that training lead you later on anywhere close to the path of things like have you heard of Scott Sonnen's Tack Fit?
I've heard of it, yeah. Or
I forget what the name of the other guy, but then there's another thing called Animal Flow, and it's all it's all body weight groundwork, right? Did you ever play with any of that later on because of gymnastics?
Well, I think one thing that really, I was doing gymnastics up until the point where, I got my cancer. I could be jogging down the street on the tar and do a round off backflip, or a Russian front round off backflip almost anywhere, right? And so it was always there, and it really helped with my, the jiu-jitsu and all the movements and hip movements and everything. And so, I put things together, and I try to incorporate tumbling as much as possible, as much as, people could do into the groundwork. And I remember this was something that was really important to me when Nina was a little baby, and I was getting ready for the Pan American Games down in Kissimmee, when they were down in Kissimmee, Florida. And she was not quite old enough to go out running with yet in the little thing. So I had to figure out, how am I going to get in shape? So I put together rounds of moves up and down the mat. So one of them would be all tumbling rounds and forward rolls, backward rolls, cartwheels, round offs, flips. And next one would be all the shrimp, bear crawl, tiger crawl, seal walk. And then I'd go back to the other ones and just do it nonstop. Go, 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 go. And man, it was tough. It's a lot of conditioning because you're doing it. And not only that, you're doing it by yourself. So it's mentally, you have to push yourself and be disciplined. You look at that clock and go, I can take just 1 minute off. No, you can't. You have to push. Right. So that was something that when I first saw Gymnastica Natural, and I go, wow, I was doing a lot of that stuff because I was just trying to make stuff up to pass the time and just keep moving nonstop. And having that gymnastics background, definitely allowed me to move around a little bit more than a lot of people.
But in not in spite, but let's say in spite of all that gymnastics activity, you went to the University of Minnesota on a wrestling scholarship?
Yeah, and so what happened is I was an All-American gymnast in high school, and my senior year I actually got injured in wrestling, so I wasn't able to finish my year. But then I did I thought, because of the injury, I ended up cracking my sternum and dislocating a clavicle, breaking a rib. I mean, it was all.
And you fought? Didn't you compete with a cracked sternum?
That was in wrestling. Yeah, so I was like, because I had to finish out my match, and I was like, I'm not going to lose to this guy. And then, so that was that ended up taking me out for like 18 weeks, right? So I thought, well, that's it. I'm probably not going to wrestle. I'll just focus on martial arts and just do my thing. But then I came back and started doing freestyle, and I started, I can still do this pretty well. And then there was a cultural exchange games where the winner would go to, or the top two guys would go to Norway, Sweden, and wrestle. And so I did that, and I did really well. And I'm like, man, I can still do this. And then that's when I started talking to the guys at the University of Minnesota again, and then went there and back then it's funny because when you say scholarship, as opposed to now, 14 credits costed $642. So it's like, it's not like now where it's like thousands and thousands, And so, a lot of times, due to the program, the scholarships got really divvied up. So maybe the scholarships were you're gonna get your books paid for, partial you know, tuition paid for. You're going to get your room and board partially paid for, whatever it was. So anything was like, you felt like you're getting like, man, this is like a ripoff. This is awesome. I'm just taking these guys to the cleaners because it was so cheap.
Yeah.
And so it was good. So I ended up flipping a coin, and that's what happened, because I had scholarships for gymnastics too.
Right. Yes.
So,
yes.
And I said, okay, heads wrestling, tails gymnastics. And I went, okay, get some wrestling. And and I didn't look back.
I have never met anyone, nor have I ever heard anybody say something negative about you. How come?
I don't know. You know, my goal is I try to get along with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I can. And I think, like I said, there's the positives and the negatives for everything. But I look at like cancer and what I went through and how I fought it. And then I started looking at it and I go, how do I not know that that person isn't going through something like that, or someone in their family or a loved one? Yeah. So if they're acting like they may be a total ass right now, but I don't know why. Maybe there's some, so I don't let it affect me that much.
Yeah.
The other thing, especially now, anytime there's something that's really, who knows, stressful or chaotic or crazy that happens, I go, it ain't cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't cancer. It's not that big of a deal. We can figure this out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, nothing really gets me too worked up. Nothing really gets me too crazy or pissed off about anything. So I'm just like, maybe that's it.
Back in university days, did you major in anything that plays a role in your life today?
No. I did this. I ended up graduating with international relations, interstate diplomacy.
Well, that worked. I mean, you've been all over the world.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I know where all the U.S. consulates are, so I can get there if I need to.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Oh, but you know, on that note, so you've been all over the world. You've done extensive amount of traveling. Why? And this is not a criticism or anything. Why do you still live in Minnesota?
For me, well, here's a unique part of Minnesota. Save Hawaii, we have the longest lifespan of any state in the United States.
Really?
Got very clean air. We got lakes everywhere. We got 4 seasons, right? Yeah. So, and that's one thing. When I was a kid, young kid, my dad was transferred to San Jose, California, right outside of San Jose, California. So we lived there for a little bit, and then we moved back. And then in 1990, when I went to California for about 4 months, that was going to be kind of the deciding factor whether I was going to move out there or not.
Yeah.
And me and traffic are not friends. And think about that. Think about that was back then. Now it'd be like I'd be going nuts.
I know.
So, and I was like, you know what? I have a lot of friends in Minnesota, and we have our 4 seasons. We, you know, my family's here.
Yeah.
And you can just get in a plane and fly to California. You get a plane and fly somewhere and see the people you want to see.
Yeah, you know, I noticed that because of my admiration for the heartiness of you Minnesotans, I promised myself one day that I would come up to Minnesota in the winter for the Inasano seminar, because it used to be in February.
Yeah.
Right? So I did it, and I swear to you, Rick and I went to breakfast, and I ordered cereal. And they brought me 2, not 1 of the little packages. They brought me 2 of those packages. And I go, is this standard in Minnesota that they feed you more? Right? You know, but that was, I mean, it was just out of my admiration for you guys. I was like, look, I'm not used to the winter, but I'll test myself also and go to Minnesota, hang out with these guys and see if I can handle it.
Yeah, you know, it's fun. It's, you know, you get so used to it. It's so funny. It's like right now, the kids, you know, it might be 20 degrees.
Yeah.
10 degrees, and they're wearing hoodies to school.
Yeah.
They're not even going to have full-on winter coats on. It's like,
Right. Yeah.
like, what the heck? And so it's just the way it is, and there's about a couple weeks where it gets pretty brutal. If your car's outside, you put the key in and it says, no, not going anywhere. So it freezes, and it's like 80 below wind chill and maybe 20 below as just normal standard temp, and it gets really cold. But on the opposite end, then there's about 2 weeks or maybe 1 or 2 weeks where it's 100 degrees and 90% humidity because we have so many lakes here.
Yeah.
And so it goes from one extreme to the next. And then falls are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, it cools down. You got your 70s and the trees are changing color and it's just beautiful out. So I like the seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it gives you the opportunity to really appreciate variation in life.
Yes, definitely, for sure. Because and it's so funny because in the dog days of summer, they're going, oh, I can't wait till winter. And then in the frigid worst, they're like, God, I can't wait till this is over. We get the summer.
Yeah.
So like. It's so funny, and every time someone says that, I said, "Don't worry, they're going to be wishing for this in about 6 months." Right. So,
can you imagine a world in which none of this happened? That is completely opposite to what you've gone through in this life?
No, I mean, it would be so. I mean, I love what I'm doing so much, and just the ups and the downs and all the training and pushing ourselves and the era that we came up in.
Yeah.
Where you just couldn't go to your computer and look up everything you wanted. You actually had to train over and over and over and try to figure stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Man, to me, that made a huge difference in a lot of the development of, Sifu Rick, yourself, all the guys from that era, because we had to literally work to remember everything. And then you'd create something and you'd come up with something. And then Guro Dan say, well, that's great, but here's now 52 counters. And you're like, what?
Yep.
What is going on here? And then we had to keep going and driving. So we didn't have that ability to turn on a thing and watch something.
I remember in '83 in Irvine taking pictures with remember when you had the camera with the 4 flash bulbs that would rotate?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's how I recorded stuff in order to have material to go back to Barbados with.
Yeah.
Right? When I spoke to Eric, he talked about purpose, having a purpose. When I spoke to, Harley Elmore?
Oh yeah, yes.
When I spoke to Harley, he said that he was born to teach martial arts. He believes that's his purpose. What's your purpose?
I believe my purpose is to improve and better people's lives using martial arts as the vehicle. So my goal is, I look back now and considering how things are being directed, I think my purpose is to bring fight back, bring that never quit, never give in, never give up attitude back to people, because they fold shop so fast when they have any kind of adversity.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, I want to take that person who has no confidence, has never done anything, and they're like at a level 2 in skill. Yeah. And I want to bring that person up to a 6.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And change their life and make them more confident. Because think of, you change that person's life, how many people are they going to interact with that change? And then those people. So within with a short list of people around you, you might be ultimately affecting tens of thousands, if not more, lives there, just because you changed somebody's life. So I believe my purpose is to change lives for the better, using martial arts as my vehicle.
It's interesting how you used the word fight, because I think a lot of people on the outside will associate you with the fight game because you're an MMA coach, because you're a jiu-jitsu competitor, because you're a Muay Thai competitor. And so they have this perhaps this single-minded idea of what fight means, you know? So because you're in the MMA world, do you make anything of this criticism of Bruce Lee that he doesn't matter because he doesn't have a fight record?
No, it's ridiculous. You know, he changed the world of fighting.
Yeah.
You know, you think of the time and the era that he was coming up and what he had to go through. At that point in time, Japanese martial artists did not do anything else other than Japanese martial arts. Korean, you know, boxers were boxers, judo was judo.
Yeah. And
he finally came around and said, no, I want to do whatever I want because it's about fighting, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and regardless of professional, like, fights, I mean, that's one thing, but, you know, Guru Dan talks about that there was times where he had, you know, that where Cedar Booth had a fight and that he fought, but it's just like, it's like me bringing back the Target days. Nobody knows about, you know, Sifu Rick Vey worked at the same Target that I did. And, you know, I don't know how many scraps we had in those, on the parking lots, right? Those aren't on our record.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right. But
yeah.
it made a big difference in how I look at the martial arts.
Yeah.
And that's even what I say right now when I tell people, and this is where I'm really big when I say the mixed martial arts, I say the truly mixed martial arts. We're looking at Kali and Jeet Fan and Silat and Savat and Kabikabong and Muay Thai and you know, all the martial arts, not just wrestling, boxing, Thai boxing, and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know, those are all great, yeah. But there's a time and a place for everything, and it all can fit together. And I say, for me right now, when I'm looking at the techniques that I really want to study on and focus on and develop, will they work with the gi, without the gi, in an MMA format where I'm getting punched and kneed and everything else, or on the pavement where there are no rules.
Right.
If there's a technique that transfers all those, that to me is the one I'm really going to focus on, and the ones I'm going to focus on. Because then I don't have to think, am I in sport doing this? Because a lot of things that you do with the gi would get you smashed for real in street fight.
Yeah.
I believe, you know,
yeah.
People slamming your head on the pavement, grabbing your hair, you know, doing all this stuff. And the same thing with all the arts. They all have their pluses and they all have their minuses. That was the whole concept of Jeet Kune Do, all right? Research, develop for your own individual. And that's what I think even the mixed martial arts are doing for some, in some respect, because each fighter has to find out what works for him. And some are more jiu-jitsu and grappling based. Some want to stand up more, but they have to learn all these other areas because the days of the one art guy is not
right.
They don't thrive anymore.
So people are largely then unaware that they are actually seeing Jeet Kune Do in action, even if they don't recognize it in action.
Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line, because what was the whole absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add specifically your own. It's not about the established art or style. It's about the individual.
Yeah.
And how he can functionalize his whatever, you know, way he's looking at the martial art and how it fits with his body. And that's why even within my school, I don't have a cookie cutter. I have one fighter that'll be like, hey, this is how you gotta approach this. Another fighter, this is how you're gonna approach this. Mm-hmm. And we all work you know, the same things, but I know where their strengths are, I know where their weaknesses are, I know where they have to, where they're most effective. And our goal is, how can we steer yourself to be where you're most effective and take yourself away from the effectiveness of your person you're dealing with.
Have you found the perfect formula for giving students? You know, there's always this thing about giving them what they want, but you also have to give them what they need. Have you found the perfect formula for that?
You know, that's always the constant search, right? You're always constantly searching to become a better. And I look at how I run my school, much different than how we run our fight teams, right? Fight teams are different. That's a different level of person as far as their mentality goes. You can push them harder, make them do things they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to do them, then sayonara, all right?
Yeah.
Whereas the student, now a huge part of it is it has to be fun. Because if it's not fun, a lot of them, they go, why would I stay here? I come here and it's not that fun. So there has to be a balance of fun, but at the same time, you got to give them what I consider, maintain the integrity of the combative martial arts.
Yeah.
And right at the very beginning of when I started my school, I came out with this, little line that said, we're dedicated to the creative and hardworking individual and to the integrity of the combative martial artist or martial arts. And so my goal was, I'm not going to teach fluff. I'm going to teach real martial arts. But now we do it in a manner that at the very beginning, you could have absolutely no training. You've never done anything in your life. And it's so easy to start because it has to be that way. If all of a sudden you jump in and, okay, hold these pads, this guy's going to kick it. And then all of a sudden they hurt their elbow or something happens where they're gone. So we progressively develop them and start to harden their bodies. And my goal is I want to take the person who thought they could never do anything, and I want to make them like you said, into a fighter. Not necessarily the guy that's going to professionally fight or the woman that's going to professionally fight, but now they are not afraid. They're willing to engage more things in their life because they have a confidence, because they've trained hard. They've pushed themselves hard. They've reached a level they never thought they could reach. And, they're having a fun time doing it, and it's a lot of camaraderie. And so we do a lot of stuff where we want to build up the camaraderie in there, but at the same time, we want to have fun. We want to have some diversity in our technique and show good stuff.
You're opening up your school. Did I hear correctly that you were, let me make sure I get this right, that you were happy being Rick's lieutenant, but that he kind of pushed you out, said, you're too good, you got to go do your own thing?
There was there was a little bit of that. And, so, I was up there and I was teaching like Thai boxing on Fridays, the Friday night rounds class. And that was really doing well. And Rick had just had Danny, his son, right, and daughter. So he was starting to have kids. So he wasn't able to train as much. And so David Leach was there. And that was the first time I was getting ready to go to Thailand as well. So Sifu Rick said, David, I want you to start training with Greg because he needs to get in shape to go to Thailand. He has to just keep on. And that really was the start of the relationship between David Leach and myself and building it up. And then it got to the point, and probably it was 1992, where I was like, well, I want to maybe go out and do my a school. And Rick was like, yeah, okay. But I'm going to tell you this right now. It's not what you think it is. Right? And so he was pretty realistic with it. It's like, it's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be this thing that's just going to be, you're going to have a bunch of students and you're going to train and everything's going to be glorious. It's going to be all this stuff. And so I said, okay. And I told him, I said, I'm going to open my school and you're in South Minneapolis. I'm not going to open a school in Minneapolis. I'm going to do it on the northern suburbs. So it'll be the opposite side. And I also was focusing a little bit more on the competitive aspect of things. And, Rick, he is just like he is unbelievable with Kali and Jean Fan and just fluid and so smooth and so we trained it with each other and did that. And I also had this affinity towards just pushing the envelope physically. And Thai boxing was the perfect art for that.
He says that you dragged him into Muay Thai.
Hey, I told him, I said, we need to do this. We need to do pads. And I'd be showing up and I'd be like, okay, he better show up. I showed up every single day. And I tell you, because of, our consistent training, we started making up all these different drills, like the jab cross series, drill rounds. and putting together what we call ranges and 2-2-2s and all these drills. And we just started putting in drill after drill after drill after drill together.
Yeah.
And, to make it, well, debatable whether he's going to say fun, but for me, I kind of thrived off that environment, right? Just being done and being absolutely exhausted. I thrived in that environment. I loved it. And that's probably kind of the wrestling background a little bit, because you're just pushing yourself to the point that you want to break the will of the other guy, and you can feel his energy just suck away from his body, and you're like, there it is. And so Thai boxing was kind of like, it was like the striking version of wrestling.
Okay.
So right away, when I saw, Ajarn for the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it.
You saw him for the first time where? In Smoky Mountains?
No, in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I go, oh my gosh, this guy's like a hardcore, mean wrestling coach, but he's Asian. and he can kick and punch and knee, and he's kind of scary. This is awesome. And I remember it was so funny because I was, just starting out in Thai boxing, because we were doing more like the Junfan kicking and kind of savant and stuff. So we started kicking. I was like, okay, I'm going to get really good at this. And I remember Ajarn, and this was after the seminar. And then the next time I was down at Smoky Mountain camp, and I go, Master Chai, I've been really working on my switch kick. And he's like, okay. And so I go, oh, you want to see it? And he goes, okay. And then I remember I kicked the pads. He goes, man, that's terrible. I'm like, dang it. I got to go harder then. And so, but to me, because it coming from that really competitive where there was you got the criticism, but at the same time, okay, well, that wasn't right. But here's what we're going to do. And that's how Ajarn was. He was this straightforward man. I don't know what you're doing there, but here's what we're going to do. And he made you like kick weeds for an hour and a half,
Can you remember the first time you saw him smile?
Oh my gosh. I think.
How many years did it take?
Gosh, because I remember this, just that he was so serious for so long. And I think it was at probably like Thai camp, like 1991 or something like that, where we put this video together, and Terry Tippy has the dead spot on imitation of Ajarn Chai. So he did a video of him interviewing us, right?
Yeah.
And he would say, okay, where did you get your stuff? And I said, well, I got mine from, I trained in Australia, and a guy that worked with kangaroos. And so I have the kangaroo kicking style, and that's why I can jump around and kick so well. And then I think Mark McFadden was like, I learned mine from Joe Louis. And so, and Ajarn, I remember him watching this video because we brought it out at night, and he's like, where did I do this interview? I don't remember this. And then all of a sudden, there was a part where Mark McFadden and I have this fake fight, and we're in this back kitchen, and I was like, Guro Dan thinks I'm better than Junfan than you. No, he doesn't. He thinks I'm better. And we made the camera angle, so all of a sudden you're going, bap, 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 bap. He's hitting, and I'm going, oh, and my head's going back, and all of a sudden Ajarn's like, he starts laughing. And I'm like, this guy laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so serious for so long. And there was kind of that, you were like, man, you don't want to make this guy mad. You want to do it right. You want to push hard. You want to make sure that, you're the guy that's, pleasing him. That's how I always looked at it. Yeah. And then, after many years, and, we share a lot of funny stories. And then the fireworks wars down in Smoky Mountain Camp, and how he was kind of the one who really started a lot of it. And, he got us bombing the Chicago people because we thought they bombed us, but it was him that did it.
Let me ask you about that, because so I met you guys from Minnesota. Then I met the guys from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Then I met the guys from Illinois, right? And I knew that there was some kind of connection, but was it camaraderie, or was there a rivalry or something? at some point?
There's never really a rivalry, save the fact that we wanted to beat them up in this fireworks war, right?
Okay.
Because we would go to Fred Dagerberg's academy all the time.
Yeah.
To do martial arts, right? To see Guro Dan, to see Ajarn Chai, to see whoever they had. So that was a great thing, because that was such a big school and there was a lot of history there.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. So we'd make our way there, and we met a lot of guys there. But, it's Minneapolis versus Chicago. Chicago is the big city, and Minneapolis is like the smaller big city, So
right.
It was kind of funny because in the Smoky Mountain camp, Ajarn Chai was like the one that kind of launched the first firework, but he kind of did it from the Chicago side towards us, and we're like, wait a minute, these guys are shooting at us, and that's it. It exploded.
Yeah. So, all right. So I want to start to wind this down and ask you this. So you're part of the fight world, the MMA fight world.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan is probably the best known MMA podcaster.
Yeah.
And he's this is just an observation. It's not a criticism. He's somewhat of a renowned atheist. But in the past couple of days, talking to Eric, talking to you, listening to you talk to other people, you guys have talked a lot about your faith. And that's not a common thing among people today. It's like, it's cool to not have a strong spiritual or religious belief.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting that you're involved in beating people up, but it's done from this perspective of faith. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I look at mixed martial arts as a sport, just like it's wrestling. Because in wrestling, you're slamming guys down and you're pushing hard, and you're trying to basically break their will so that you can win. Right? But it's against another person that's equally trained and equally able to do that to you. So it's not like a bully mentality where you're just fighting people for the sake of fighting. It's like you're trying to test yourself. You're trying to test yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. And if that fight gets to the point where, man, all those things go away, now it's like a spiritual thing, right? Yeah. There's a battle. And if you look even within the Bible, bringing up wrestling and shadow battles, battles and fighting. Yeah. I mean, it's human nature, right? Yeah. It's human nature to battle. And so, to me, because people are flawed and there's violence out there, I feel that there's almost a necessity to kind of help people be able to deal with that potential violence. Even if it's when you are physically more confident and know that you are able, you carry yourself in a way that you'll probably never have to fight.
Right. Yes.
Right. And I think that the guys who are competing in the cage or competing in the ring in Thai boxing, they're kind of putting themselves as test dummies. So we can find out what works for everyone else. Right. And so I think that's kind of how I look at it. I look at it not as a way of violence. I never even think about that. I just think it's, here it is. We're competing, we're fighting, and we want to win and we want to lose like champions. So if the ref steps in, I want the guys to be more, hey, it's just like a pin. We pinned them. Good enough.
Yeah.
And it's against another equally trained person. So it's just that battle, it's a battle. And, for me personally, when people say, well, this guy's this and this guy's that, honestly, I don't think the Lord is that concerned about who's going to win this fight. You know, he's going to, you know, this is a world of problems going on. The octagon is not one of them.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you one question, and I want you to tell us a story, and we'll finish this up because I want to be respectful of your time. So when I was getting ready to dialogue with Juan Perez, you know Juan Perez?
Yep.
Okay, so when I was getting ready to dialogue with him, I watched Full Metal Jacket.
Oh yeah.
Right. If even though I know him really well, to get into a mindset to deal with Neil Coliff, I can watch Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Right. What should I have watched to prepare? What movie should I have watched to prepare for you? Because I have an idea, right? But I want to hear what you say.
That's a pretty unique question. You know, I'm always I would say I'm kind of more on the Crusader side of things, you know, so, you know, it's going to be like a Braveheart or, you know, something of that nature, because I want to, you know, deal with the underdogs, deal with the people who need help, and I want to be that motivator, and I want to be the guy that leads from the front.
Okay. You know what movie I thought of?
What was that?
Vision Quest.
Oh, yes. You know, what's so funny about this? I was just talking to some of the guys at the school, and I said, have you ever seen Vision Quest? And they wrestled, but they're of newer generations. And they go, no. And I'm like,
no.
What?
No, they don't know anything.
I said, how could you not have ever watched Vision Quest?
They don't know anything.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I go, that was like the first definitive wrestling movie. And it's more than that. It's about a guy that's dealing with all these internal things going on.
Yeah.
And, such a great movie.
How do you deal? I mean, because I know you're a guy who can handle frustration really well. But how do you deal with this current generation? And for one, their whole thing is, well, I can just Google it. I don't have to learn anything and retain anything because I can just look it up. How do you deal with this younger generation?
You know, it definitely is frustrating, but at the same time, you know, I think that I use that as, again, another motivation for me to be able to teach them martial arts and force them to become thinkers. So I'm not going to show them every single detail all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to show a technique or a position. I'm going to say, okay, now I want the other person to get on top, and he's going to hold you down. You got to figure it out. And so now it's like, you can't Google this, can you?
Yeah. All right. So listen, I want to close this up. I want to ask you, if you will, tell us the story of the Filipino nurse.
Oh, yes. And so when I was battling the second cancer, the neurolymphomatosis, I was on so much morphine because I was going through so much pain. Kind of to put this in perspective, even I just went down about 5 months ago with my mom down to Mayo, and I talked to one of the doctors that did the peripheral neurosurgery on my sciatic nerve. But the pain doctor says, we still consider your case the standard for how much pain someone can deal with. And they said, your pain was worse than our burn units because it didn't stop for 6 months. And we had no idea why it was happening. And so there was this point where the morphine was no longer working because the nurse would put it in and my heart would slow so much and I'd stop breathing, and they'd have to come in and physically tell me to start breathing. And so they're like, we got to do something because we just can't give him any more morphine. So they started putting me on a 48-hour ketamine drips. So now you're like on a horse tranquilizer to kind of separate your brain from reality. And there was this one night where the doctor said, well, if he makes it through till tomorrow, we can, you know, that'll be a big thing because we don't know. Mm-hmm. So my mom was there and she took that shift, right? Because V was, you know, kind of dealing with the kids and she's there all day. So my mom was there, and this the nurses were inside, and all of a sudden this Filipino nurse comes into the room and tells my mom, well, you can go sleep. And she goes, oh no, I'll stay here. And this is my mom telling this story, all right? Because I was like on Loopville, right? I was just like mumbling. And all I remember of the Filipino nurse was he was going to put his hands on my leg. And at that point in time, if you touched my skin, it felt like someone was just cutting it open with a razor blade. It was so much pain. Yeah. And all of a sudden I saw him, and I remember tensing up. And then that's all I remember. And my mom said he touched my leg, and she was like, no, you can't. And he just started rubbing my leg. And she said, I just went into the deepest sleep ever. I just went and started sleeping. And I was up screaming. I mean, screaming in pain. And he goes, don't worry about it. This will be fine. You can go take a nap, and then come back. And so my mom left and went back to the room, and she said she came back and he was still just rubbing my leg, and the nurses were working around him, and she decided, well, wow, this guy's just giving up his whole night for my son. This is great. And just rubbing my leg. Well, the next day, it was like a miraculous turnaround, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously there was still pain, but I survived the night, and they could start doing the things that they didn't think they were able to do. And I was fighting strong. My heart was stronger. Everything was stronger to be able to go through the next phase of this. And my mom was like, well, man, that was so beautiful that Filipino nurse came in to help and just soothe him. And the other nurses go, what Filipino nurse? And she goes, no, the guy that was there, just massaging his legs all night. We were there all night. There was nobody in there. She goes, there was a Filipino nurse. And my mom goes, I am convinced without a shadow of a doubt it was an angel. Wow. And the nurses, but they said, and even when you watch the video of my thing, they said, it's like a miracle how much he turned in one night. And my mom wrote about it, and she put it on paper. Yeah. And she's like, yep, he was there all night.
Have you ever told Sifu Dan that story?
I've told Eric. I've told many people. I think I may have, but I'm going to tell him.
Yeah. Because okay, so I'm going to tell you something, because I saw this years and years ago, but I saw it again just now. When you were telling the story, for a second you went like this. You closed your eyes and you threw your head back. Has anybody ever told you that you look like Dan Inosanto?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to find a picture of it. I'm gonna try to do a side-by-side comparison. I swear to you, I've thought it several times before, and I saw it again just now.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, seriously, right? Okay, listen, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so thanks for taking some time out for me.
Oh, it was fun. It's always fun to relive some of the old stuff and just talk martial arts with an old friend. It's always awesome. Love it.
All right, man. Take care. I'll talk to you again soon.
All right.
All right.
Take it easy.
Now, that was great fun. That was Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number 22 with Greg Nelson. And I hope you guys enjoy that as much as I enjoyed talking with him. And like he said, it's always good to relive the old days and get some feedback on the modern days with an old friend. So this is episode 22. Episode 23 will be on Monday at the same time, and we'll do it again, because I really like when you guys can chime in live on Facebook. So we'll try it again, but as you can see, it's sometimes problematic, and so we end up doing the off-camera recording. But Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, episode 23 will be with Rick Fay. That'll be the end of the Minnesotan Viking a hat trick, right? So I hope you guys will join in then, and we'll get that one done. All right, so take care. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.